Good evening and welcome to the September 27th Environmental Advisory Council meeting. I'm filling in for Brenda, welcome, Brenda Gatanda today. My name is Josh Hilbert and I'm the Vice Chair. To start, I'd like to do the review and approval of last month's minutes. Does anybody have any comments or suggestions?
No.
Any motion to approve?
Motion to approve?
All in favor?
Aye.
I have some announcements today. I have actually a fairly decent list of them. And for Anne, I will give you this afterwards, so you don't have to jot anything down. As you may know, there's been some discussion about stormwater issues in the township over the past month. So the first four of these happen to be about stormwater, so it's very apropos. The first being that to let you know that the Radnor Township engaged Chagrin Valley Engineering in June of this year to review alternate stormwater management options for North Wayne Park. They gave a presentation to the township last week, and that presentation, called North Wayne Park Stormwater Management Options, an Overview, is on the Radnor.com website. The presentation presented three options for managing stormwater that's processed through that park. Those options cost estimates range from about $1 million to $1.5 million. The park's facilities there, the stormwater facilities, handle only about 8% of the total drainage area that drains through that often flooded Poplar Avenue culvert. The rest of the drainage area, the rest of the 92% is not handled by that North Wayne Park. One of the main themes that came out of this presentation was that the implementation of any expanded stormwater management system at the North Wayne Park should be considered an incremental improvement, not a total solution to the flooding issues at the Poplar Avenue or in the Gulf Creek corridor. So I encourage everybody to take a look at that. It's not very long, Radnor.com. You can read that. The Radnor Conservancy and the Radnor Township EAC are planning to do a program on stormwater resources. Stroud Water Research is going to be the presenter. These guys are a Chester County nonprofit dedicated to the scientific research of wetlands, creeks, and streams. Creeks and rivers. The presentation is Thursday, November 29th at 7 p.m. at this, I think it's in this room here at the Radnor Township building. And for more information, you should go to stroudcenter.org. November 29th at 7 p.m. More information at Stroud, S-T-R-O-U-D, stroudcenter.org. The Garrett Hill Coalition is presenting a program called Managing Stormwater in Our Backyards, Part 1. And it is subtitled, How to Install a Rain Garden at Your Property and Why. This program is going to be this Sunday, September 30th, from 2 to 4 at the Radnor Township Municipal Building. I didn't have any more information than that, other than there will be some experts there to help explain the hows and whys of installing a rain garden, and there is a little bit more information available on the SaveGarrettHill.com website, and I believe there's also a bit of information on our own Green Radnor website. Radnor Green or Green Radnor? Radnor Green.
Do you know if they're going to be recording that?
That I don't know. I'm not sure. That one might be outside. I'm not positive. The Pennsylvania Resources Council and the Darby Creek Valley Association are presenting a seminar, I suppose, on, it's entitled Simple Steps to Protect the Darby Creek at Home. At this seminar, you will learn how to harvest rainwater from your roof and divert it for on-site usage in the landscape. And what I think is an excellent feature to this is that after the presentation, the attendees will be able to construct a fully functional rain barrel from recycled food grade barrels that you may then take home and use on your own property. And because of that feature, they really want you to pre-register. So You can register online at prc.org. That's an acronym for Pennsylvania Resources Council, prc.org. Now, this is going to be held on Wednesday, October 10th at 6:30, and the location is in Upper Darby, Pennsylvania, at the Watkins Senior Center. Robin, you familiar with that?
I don't know the senior center, but I was familiar with the fact that
The event?
we're going to be doing the program.
It sounds neat. Sounds great. All right, those are the stormwater-related announcements. I have a couple more. This one is the Chester County Citizens for Climate Protection. They are inviting us to participate in their program called Sustainability at the Township and Community Level. There will be two presentations at this event. The first will be a case study of West Vincent Township's sustainability plan and process. And I guess during that portion, there'll be some people from the township who will discuss how they went about creating their sustainability plans and discuss about the implementation. And then the second phase is called Assessing Sustainability, the first step in creating a sustainable community. This one will be presented by the Brandywine Conservancy, or the Brandywine Conservancy's Environmental Management Center. They'll be discussing their investigation, interestingly, I think, of the extent to which a municipality's plans, ordinances, and policies either promote or are an obstacle to countywide sustainability. So, very apropos to where we are right now. We are obviously, as the EAC, trying to develop input to the planned institutional ordinance, and I think it'd be very interesting to see what these guys, the Brandywine Conservancy Environmental Management Center, has to say about what these ordinances can do to promote sustainability. And heaven forbid, we would certainly wouldn't want to be an obstacle to that. So that is going to be held October 3rd at 7 p.m. at Westchester Borough Hall. And you can find out more information at chescocooler.org. That is Chesco, C-H-E-S-C-O, cooler.org. Lastly, the community energy, which we are all familiar with through their efforts to install an electric vehicle charging station here in Wayne. And they're also a Radnor-based company. They are asking everybody to attend an event called Turn the Power On. This is a celebration to mark the beginning of Keystone Solar. Keystone Solar is a 6-megawatt solar farm in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania that has just been finished. It is Pennsylvania's largest solar farm. And I'm not sure whether you're literally going to throw the breaker at this event, but they're kicking it off with a celebration. They want you to celebrate this clean energy milestone with all who were part of making it happen. I believe there's going to be some politicians there and some other bigwigs. This is happening October 16th from 9:30 a.m. to 12 p.m. So it's the morning of Tuesday, October 16th, and that's at the farm in Lancaster County where this is installed. It's called the Kreider Farm. CommunityEnergyInc.com is where you can find out more information, and you can also pre-register. I think there's beverages and food served as well. And as an aside, Community Energy, interesting to note, is now a load-serving entity. This is new information, from what I understand, that they are now, if I understand this correctly, before they had actually partnered with somebody to provide electricity to our community or to their members, and now they are actually their own load-serving entity, and that might be very new, like as in this month. And while I was on their website checking out that kind of information, I decided to sign up for electricity there. So I'll give them a plug. I signed up for a really cool product. It is 100% Pennsylvania wind and water electricity. It is about 10 cents a kilowatt hour, which is about 5% cheaper than what I was paying with PECO. They also have a 100% wind and solar too, which is a different product. It's a little bit more expensive. The water actually brings the price down. And there are some other companies on this PAPowerswitch.com. You can go on there, you can see who provides what kind of green power options, where the green power comes from. It's not all Pennsylvania. Some of them is from, you know, Texas or wherever. But and I was looking at one that was actually cheaper, 100% Pennsylvania green energy. But you do have to read the fine print in terms of what kind of green energy you're signing up for. So sometimes green energy can actually be, you know, coal-based, believe it or not. So just keep that in mind when you do your research and pick what you think is best.
Josh, we had spoken about that before, where you end up getting, your bill still comes from PECO. Some of that transaction happens on the back end, and there's not a lot of,
This is a painless process. It's a very painless process. Your bill still comes from PECO. PECO still has all the high tension wires and all the distribution and all the transmission. You're just buying generation from somewhere else, so it'll be on the same bill.
Yeah, you don't have, okay. I was going to make a joke about getting your power fixed once out, but it's all still handled by PECO.
Yeah, PECO handles all the storm response. That's all for my announcements. Anybody have any other announcements?
Josh, I was just going to note on the, well, high volume. I was just going to note that we are encouraging the township to look at the possibility of doing a request for proposals on energy generation for the township. So there still is an opportunity out there, and I think the township staff is going to be looking at that possibility of taking a look at what kind of a break in cost they might be able to get through a contract.
Sure, yep. Okay, on to the work group reports. First up is the greenhouse gas reduction and the Radnor Green Team report. I can tell you that the Radnor Green Team hopes to have their very first meeting sometime between now and our next EAC meeting. Hasn't been scheduled yet, but hopefully within the next 2 to 3 weeks. And in this work group, I decided to throw a little report on a seminar that I went to regarding street lighting, and it was very interesting. I went to it about 2 weeks ago, and so I'll just give you this report now. The Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission, DVRPC, these guys put this presentation on along with PECO, and at this meeting there was at least a dozen PECO employees there, and along with myself representing Radnor, there were probably more than a dozen other townships, local townships at this event. It was all townships. You know, there wasn't any individuals at this unless they were representing a power supplier or something like that. But it was well attended, and the people that were in the office were enthusiastic about. I'm using enthusiastic lightly. I mean, some people were very upset about how much money that some of these townships, you know, have to pay for their power. So here's how it went. We were supposed to be able to learn strategies on how to save money and energy in street lighting, and we did get kind of hung up on some of the early issues during the seminar. So I didn't really come away with any answers. I just found out what all the problems are. So it turns out that DVRPC is going to do a follow-up now to sort of help us figure out the way forward. And it applies directly to Radnor Township. We have 1,400 streetlights here at Radnor Township. I can just give you a quick background on this. I think and I didn't bring the bill with me, but I believe we are spending around $18,000 a month. I might have that wrong. No, $15,000 a month we spend at Radnor. So the first thing we learned was how the electric rate tariff is set. Okay, and this is a very important. I'll come back to why it's important, but every, say, 20 years, PECO goes about setting this tariff. This last event happened like 2 years ago. Okay, and they had teams of expert consultants figure out where PECO spends all their money, and then they divvy up all those expenditures, all those accounts, and they kind of allot them to the different kinds of rates that they have. So, 10% will go to, or 1% will go to street lighting rate, and then 30% will go to residential power rates, and 40% will go to commercial. So that they sort of split up all their costs. It's kind of like a cost allocation process. And some of those costs are fixed costs, right? So the high tension service that they provide, the maintenance of those high tension poles and wires, that cost is there for anybody who buys power, right? So they have to divvy up the costs of those high tension wires to all their accounts. And then, I'll give you another one, storm damage response. Like, regardless of whether you're buying 1 kilowatt hour or millions of kilowatt hours, you still expect PECO to fix your power if the power goes out. So those are some of those fixed costs that aren't related to how much power you buy. And then there's the variable costs. Those variable costs are what we're more familiar with, the cost to generate electricity. Typical street lighting bill, and this is true for Radnor's, I double checked it, are 2/3 related to fixed costs, 1/3 related to variable costs. And they structure the bill such that only 1/3 of your bill is based upon how much electricity used. 2/3 of our street lighting bill is based on fixed costs, and we would get charged $9,000 a month even if we turned all of our street lights off, just because we are connected. They consider each street light is, as you might know, each street light is that's connected on a telephone pole has a connection to the grid right there at the pole. They consider that a connection. Same way that your house is connected and we get billed. Each street light is its own account, basically. So those fees add up very quickly. And what you can some simple math, you can see that if you did this beautiful upgrade project that reduced your electric consumption by half, your bills would only drop by 17%. Yeah, I suppose, unless you get off the grid, yeah. This is obviously related to just PECO's bills, but
just as an aside, in King of Prussia in the Business Improvement District, we're putting up a 22-foot sign because it's not conveniently located near a power supply. It's going to be solar with battery that'll operate it for like 8 or 10 hours. Sounds a lot like a street light.
yeah.
Especially if you use LED lights.
So there's part of the solution that we need to learn about, right? So I didn't learn much about the solutions. I just found out what the problems are. The problems are interesting enough. As you can imagine, a switch to LEDs is an expensive project, and if you're only saving, on that 1/3 portion of your bill, it would take some pretty interesting financing or cheap products to be able to get a payback that is acceptable to like somebody like the township. So,
did they talk, Josh, at all about what those 2/3, what that's going to? Is that like repairing it?
Yeah, I got the whole list of what that's
breakdown?
going to. It's pages and pages and pages of services that they provide that they consider to be a fixed cost. I gave you the examples of maintaining the high tension system, maintaining the distribution wires.
Because it would, to Skip's point, it would be interesting to know whether any townships have looked at maybe a different arrangement or some other, I don't know, going off grid, but, whether there are options.
There are options. There are. One thing you can do is you can have a single tap into the system, and then you run your own wires amongst the streetlights, right? So then you only get charged one time, and say you run 10 lights off that one tap. So I heard through the grapevine from the people that I was sitting with that there are ways around this, but like I said, we didn't really get too much into the solution part of things.
Slaying out
So I can tell you that the next tariff setting process is so far in the future that it's not even worth talking about. It's probably maybe 20 years in the future.
One other weird idea to float, I don't know if they came up. I think the phone system, of course, fewer people are using landlines, but the phone system has its own power. And if you use LED lights, and you could somehow work out a deal with the phone company to power your LED lights.
Are you making this up right now? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
I just made it up. I just thought of it right now.
Hey, I don't know. Maybe that's possible.
It'd be an interesting pilot project if you.
Yeah. I could tell you that DVRPC is definitely an ally in our efforts in the township to become more energy efficient. They have a great website. So if you want to learn a little bit more about where I went to, you can do a search for DVRPC Energy and Climate Change Initiatives. And that the first thing that comes up will be the link to this seminar that I went to. So hopefully I'll have some more information about what we can do. But it was a little discouraging, I must admit. I thought it was going to be, in fact, in our greenhouse gas action plan, our projections that we were putting in there were based on the fact that we thought we could reduce our bills by 50%, so this was a little disappointing. So I know that Steve Norsini and Melissa Kahn had signed up for this, but they weren't able to go, so I'll be passing this information along to them. But like I said, hopefully we'll have some more information.
Josh, could I just ask, oh, it's so loud. Could I just ask a question? The fixed costs, are those allocated evenly or in proportion to the amount of power used by that type of energy user?
I saw the way they allocated it, and for instance, some of the fixed costs, maybe it was the average, the total fixed cost, were allocated about 0.5% to streetlights. So it was basically allocated based upon the load that they are on the system. But in some cases, they would say, okay, well, streetlights, because you guys beat up our telephone poles more than any other service, we're going to allocate more of the telephone pole replacement costs to streetlights. So it was kind of fair.
And one other question. The DVRPC is developing its new inventory report. Did you want me to talk about that now, or should I do it later?
Perfect timing.
Okay. So what they are doing is planning this new report that they'll be issuing on the greenhouse gas emissions in the Delaware Valley as of 2010. And they've assembled an advisory group to brainstorm about how to make this inventory, which we've seen before. We saw the one they did in 2009, how to make it both as informative as possible to communities that are already taking initiative on greenhouse gas reduction, and also how to share strategies with others that want to get moving. I'll be very quick. Their report is the timeline is to finish up the report and issue it in, I believe it's one of these pages. I think it's early in 2013. I'm sorry, the final inventory document will be out in December of 2012. So that's based on 2010 information, but it's going to be it's going to have a lot of great detail. A couple of things they're doing which are going to make this more refined information are, number one, they're incorporating information on life cycle analysis of energy sources. So they're going a little bit deeper into the comparative greenhouse gas emissions of various energy sources. Another thing they're doing is providing more detailed information on community by community in terms of they'll have an online report where they'll have a map, and each community will be able to be beamed up, and you can see what the percentages of their emissions are by sector, which will be interesting to see and compare. And they'll be doing that per capita as well, because of course we have tiny and larger communities in the area. So that'll be very interesting to see. And then finally, another thing they're doing, which may be relevant to us, is they are going to be highlighting different kinds of greenhouse gas emission reduction strategies. And so, some of those will be related business activity, businesses that are doing things to reduce their waste or that kind of thing. Some of it will be looking at transportation solutions. And one of the things that seemed interesting to put forward is in waste reduction to look at, separating the composting that we do and how that reduces the amount of organics we send to the landfill and reduces the weight of our waste that goes to the landfill, that kind of thing. So if anybody has thoughts on types of activities that should the DVRPC should try and profile, because they're just good examples to demonstrate to others, get in touch with me. Another I suggested that they look at is if there's a business that has really shifted to a lot more telecommuting and, reducing the amount of travel of their employees. So, thanks. Unless there are any questions.
No, I was just saying, hopefully we'll be able to use that. That's 2010. So our Radnor's inventory that we did was based upon our 2005
Right.
emissions, and we were able to use the DVRPC 2005 Delaware Valley inventory to sort of pony off of,
Right.
use some of the information off that. So I always thought it'd be nice to do a 2010 inventory. It's probably a little bit optimistic, but we'll probably be doing one in 2015 or something like that. So this would be a good one to take a close look at.
Theoretically, you're going to have information about Radnor from 2010 by just touching the map, and it'll pop up.
Yeah.
And different sectors, too. So you
Yeah.
can look at the governmental impact theoretically.
I'm not sure if you can, but we weren't able to do that before, were we, in 2005? They didn't split out like, okay, well, here's what the government spent.
Well, and it will be, no, because it will not be divided between the municipality and the residents. So this will be overall.
Overall, yeah.
but-
Well, when you said activities, that's just residential and commercial as opposed to like more specific than that?
Yes, it will be, it'll be aggregated, so, but it should give us a sense of direction in whether we're making
Yeah.
some improvements.
I would imagine they're able to fairly easily separate out those kind of things based upon their rate, the tariff that is being billed. So residential is easy to split from commercial, which is easy to split from industrial.
Yeah.
But as Radnor Township, our rate is probably the same as, let's say, a commercial entity. So they can't split us out from Taco Bell,
Yeah.
Which
So-
is cool.
Go
I
ahead.
have a stray suggestion for the green team. I don't know if we didn't consider it at the time, but it's clear that for a protracted period of time, natural gas will be cheaper than other fossil fuel sources. And I don't know how the township heats its various buildings, if any of it is carbon-based or it's all electric, I don't know. But if it is oil at all, they should be looking at the earliest opportunity that's reasonably commercially or economically, I should say, feasible to convert to gas if they have to do that.
Yeah, our inventory, I believe, is still posted on the website. But from my recollection, I would say that oil-based heat was nearly non-existent. The school district probably has some backup oil use, but almost all of our larger buildings are natural gas heat.
Good.
Yeah. Okay, moving along, the next work group is sustainability, and you didn't happen to bring a water sense tip of the month, did you?
I brought some interesting news from WaterSense, the EPA program. They are running a Battle of the Buildings, a national competition in which they are challenging commercial building owners across the nation to a head-to-head battle to see who can reduce their energy and water use the most. So they're inviting hotels, retail stores, office buildings, hospitals, all sorts of building owners to essentially set a benchmark of what they're currently using and then measure their savings. And the EPA will be bestowing an award on the top water saver nationally in April of next year. And they will also be listing all the top energy and water savers. So it's a nice program that'll get some publicity for people who are on the cutting edge. Find out more about it at the WaterSense site. There's a little description of the Battle of the Buildings. Interestingly, I also found that I'll pass this around. That a state, Georgia is suffering from very severe drought conditions. The drought monitor, which we often talk about, shows that Georgia and other parts of the South are in extreme drought conditions, and some in even worse than extreme, called exceptional drought conditions, as well as much of the Midwest continue to be in extreme or exceptional drought conditions. As a, I don't know if it's a result, but Georgia is beginning to offer a sales tax holiday for WaterSense products. So they are setting aside a week in early October to encourage folks to buy WaterSense labeled appliances, faucets, shower heads, irrigation controllers, and the tax holiday is going to start October 5th and continue through the weekend. WaterSense labeled products with a sales price of $1,500 or less, purchased for non-commercial home use or personal use, will be available without state or local taxes. I think that's an interesting way to start to get people, to know about WaterSense products, and also to think about maybe, hey, this is a good time to do it. So I think it's a great idea, maybe for Pennsylvania to consider as a way to encourage people to step forward on this issue. We're not currently in drought conditions, but we were recently in drought conditions, as we talked about in the previous few meetings. So I would like to see if the EAC would be supportive in essentially passing a resolution in support of the idea of suggesting to maybe a state representative that this is a good thing to consider, and send it forth. It wouldn't just be from Sloan Walker concerned citizen, it would be from the Radnor EAC if folks thought this was a good idea. So wanted to toss that out there, get people's take, and see if people like the idea, we could consider a resolution in support.
I'd vote to support a resolution. I don't know if anyone would second it, and maybe if we could vote in favor tonight, and then the motion would be that it would be approved by circulation, so you could wrap something up.
Okay, that would be very helpful, because it's hard to do it on the fly. So, do we have a second? Or I guess you're the chair.
Yeah, let's just talk a little bit more about it. I'm in support of it, and I think we are a WaterSense partner.
We are.
Yeah, and I was wondering maybe if the WaterSense, which is an entity, or which is a program run by the EPA, right?
That's right.
Whether they might offer us some assistance, or maybe that we could find out who else around us might be a WaterSense partner. What I'm thinking of here is maybe getting a couple of townships together, or I think there's even some corporations that are WaterSense partners too, right? It's not just townships.
That's right.
And I'm not sure if there's any corporations in Radnor that are, but hey, the more the merrier. That, but of course I don't want to delay it, so there's that also. So if just want to throw that out there and see what everybody thought about that.
Well, I think if we are considering maybe taking the time between now and the next meeting to draft the resolution, we probably would vote on it at the next meeting. So there, and I don't think there's anything. We're not going to do it in the next few weeks. So I don't think there's any reason we couldn't do what you're suggesting, maybe look at who are other local or Pennsylvania water sense partners, and see if they like the idea and want to sign on, and then it's not just Radnor EAC, but I know there's at least I think there's one other township that's a water sense partner, if memory serves. We could reach out to them.
Another approach is, I mean, if we stay on our own course and draft a letter that we want to send, and then at least forwarding it to other water sense partners, saying this is what we're doing, you
Right.
should do it too, instead of trying to collaborate one letter,
That might be
multiple
more effective. We
townships.
could just, we could do it ourselves and then forward them the language in the
Yeah.
resolution. So it'd be just as easy for them just to change the name at the top of the page and do it themselves, yeah.
It's trailblaze.
I think a volume of letters would be better than just one letter from a larger group. If they get a volume of letters from different groups, might be more impactful.
True.
That's very true.
The other thought on it, I don't know, it's always encouraging, or it's just, I think, logical and best. We don't want to be in this position, and that's, like, I think it'd be really neat to see momentum to that as, this is why we're doing it, because we don't want to be here. And it's not that, it's a shame they have to do this now, instead of doing it beforehand and avoiding a drought situation completely, or helping avoid one at least. So I think it's a great position to be in. Good idea.
But then the other thing is that our inventory demonstrated that the pumpage for, water is contributing to our greenhouse gas emissions. So water conservation in general is going to help us, so.
Well, I guess it sounds like we have a lot of support. So how about we follow that recommendation that we circulate by email? We'll get the text right and do a vote at the next meeting. Does that sound reasonable? So do we have, so I'll.
I think that's
Judge, you
fine, and
wanna-
I'll draft up a resolution that we'll circulate and look at for
Great.
next meeting.
The tiny collateral other issue is that when you reduce your water use, it'll impact your sewer bill, which is based on your meter.
That's right. That's right.
Is that it for the?
That's it.
Okay, staying in sustainability, I wanted to just briefly touch on the rain gardens that are in the works in our township, one at Cowan Park and one in Garrett Hill. I was hoping we might get Dan today to talk about the Garrett Hill one, because I'm not sure I have an update on that. I don't have any information on that. Cowan Park is in pretty much the same stage as it was last month. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to communicate with the Public Works Department here at the township to find out how to move forward with the planting. But basically, to remind you, the convenience station or comfort station, whatever they call the bathrooms these days in the parks, was replaced. It's smaller. The excess, or the new area that's been available because the footprint of this building is smaller, we're going to install a rain garden. And this rain garden is going to be designed to handle the sheet flow, stormwater runoff from not only the roof of the comfort station, but also from the ball field next to it. And the EAC was approached by Steve Norsini of Public Works to assist the township in choosing the plants that are to be installed, and then and kind of picking the layout, and then actually getting the shovels and planting them in the ground. I've found a great source of volunteers in the North Wayne Protective Association. They're ready to jump all over this. So we have our volunteers. Exactly where we're getting the plants from, I haven't exactly figured that out yet. But I know there's a grant that has been awarded to the township, a state grant, to pay for these, the plants and the design of the garden. The township is going to be using their backhoes to do all the heavy work, so this is going to be very easy planting for us. We're going to use township mulch and compost to create the beds, and so now we just need to get it in. And we have about another 2 to 3 weeks, which is the ideal time to get plants in the ground before it starts getting a little cold. So hopefully we can pull it together. If not, maybe I'm going to be proposing that we mothball the garden and plant in the spring. So hopefully I have an update.
So there's not a date set yet?
No, there's no date set. No. So that's it for sustainability. The next work group is Planning Commission, Institutional Zoning. Skip?
Well, I had hoped to have information available for everyone earlier than 5 o'clock today. But regrettably, our consultant was not able to do that until about 3:45, and I, for some reason, wasn't constantly looking at my email for about 40 minutes. But in any event, there are updates. I haven't had a chance to fully review it since I've only seen it for about 60 minutes. And there's new language that the consultant is bringing to our attention, I think in response to Sloan, about LEED certification. There's additional discussion and more information about setbacks and conservation easements. I can't summarize it for you, but I can say that next Thursday, tune in and, if possible, attend, and you'll hear it aired out and explained, and questions from. You already made copies. That's great. I have my copy. I did get a chance to make my own copy, but the one thing a couple of little things I'd like to comment that we didn't really address that much before, and the consultant still hasn't quite reached on it. One thing that's important to a number of the planning commissioners is a definition of a green roof, and that's a major opportunity, it would seem to me, for the EAC to weigh in, because a rudimentary green roof, I think, takes like a 2-year storm, and then it starts to just discharge the water. And we saw a very elaborate presentation when we were reviewing Luella Court about different types of green roofs, and that, you could have people walking on them in the parks, the equivalent of a park on top, trees and everything else. The green roof at Luella Court is mainly going to be grass, and it's one of those 2 to 3 year storm roofs. But because the township does not have a definition of what a green roof is, and there's no way to determine if 2 years is enough to disqualify the roof as impervious surface, and there's been all sorts of discussions about, is an underground garage a structure or not. So there's a lot of work to be done, is my point. And one thing the EAC could contribute would be information about green roofs that we don't have, and that the consultant so far, although he may quite do a wonderful job, but he has not presented that so far. There's just a reference in here, it says to be provided, but that's been a placeholder for 2 months. So if we could help him out, it would help the process out.
Have you done any background work on that yet, in terms of looking for industry certifications of what defines a green roof or anything like that?
We're all, one or two of us are engineers, but not of green roofs.
Okay.
So if there's a source that the EAC can find, or that we just find one way or another amongst us, that would be great. That would be helpful. The only other thing is that I think you will find that the dialogue will be a little different on Thursday, because the consultant is approaching this from a different direction than some of the planning commissioners feel he should approach it from.
The overall project, or just the?
I don't want to speak out
no.
of turn, but it deserves to be in a public meeting and other planning commissions. You could say that some people on the planning commission would like to manage institutional growth by perhaps making it a little more difficult in some respect from the perception of the institution. Greater setbacks, more parking required, things like that. And the consultant appears to be approaching it somewhat from the standpoint that we need to modernize our ordinance and be more accommodating to continuing appropriate and environmentally sensitive growth. And so there's going to be some disagreement about which way is the right way. We never contemplated in advance of this process that we would raise the building height. But I have learned that, that may be appropriate to raise it somewhat. Some of the discussions are talking about 60 and on higher towers in the PI district, and right now it's 38 feet. So you could see how the public is not enthused.
Well, I would just like to say that I attended one of the commission's meetings and was very impressed by the time and effort that you are spending and to go through this. This is a really complex issue, and I was amazed by really the task that the Planning Commission has, and also pleased that even despite the amount of work you have to do with all the rest of the details, that there is some ability to carve out some time and attention to building in some green provisions. I don't know if this is a time we could take a few minutes to talk about what the state of play is on the green piece of the puzzle, because if
It could be 3 times as many things. There's no hidden or public agenda on this.
Okay.
It's possible to be creative. Some of the things could easily translate into other ordinances.
Right.
I mean, the stormwater issue is going to affect everything. So, I mean, to the extent that there's a more creative way to blend that in, it'll be put in.
Good.
I think it just is a difficult thing to get your hands around because it's a big, complicated piece of
Yeah. And
legislation, so to speak.
I mean, from a big picture perspective, I'm thrilled that there is a draft that's beginning to have some green incentives in the zoning ordinance. Obviously it's a draft. It seems like it's sort of a fairly long process before we get a final even proposal to the Board of Commissioners, but we're underway, which is great. The consultant has added the green incentives under Section F. Obviously, they're under review, and also they've been changed recently. I guess the one of the questions I've got is looking at some of the alternatives. The Tradifrin ordinance, which I circulated before, and also there's a copy that I just passed around, takes a similar but interesting. There's a wrinkle in it that is, I think, worth at least chatting about and getting some take on. The Tradifrin approach is to under their section 208-71 zoning bonuses in subsection C, they talk about essentially things that builders can do that would put them into eligibility, not automatic approval, but eligibility to get some bonuses in their building permits. Things that include but are not limited to providing off-street parking in excess of the minimum required, renovating existing building facades to incorporate public art or unique architectural features. Number 3 is close to our discussion here, which is LEED certification, at least at the silver level. And then number 4 is installing innovative stormwater best management practices. 5 is something with respect to parking, structured parking facility. And then the number 6 is similar cooperative actions indicating a desire to further the goals and objectives of the township comprehensive plan. So it's obviously a fairly flexible list. It doesn't seem to be a 6 exact things exclusive of other things that people might propose. And then it basically says under section D, conditional zoning bonuses may be granted as follows. And it lists things that that the Planning Commission or the Board of Commissioners can, in fact, grant. I just think this is an interesting, somewhat flexible approach to encouraging not just green, but other innovative or interesting features that, in the discretion or in the consideration of the appropriate board, could lead to a bonus, a zoning bonus. And in contrast, the list that we have currently in the draft that's under consideration here in the Radnor draft is a little bit more, sort of specified with respect to, looking at section, F. It talks about, solar screens over windows may intrude into a setback area by up to 10 feet. So it sounds like a little bit of an allowance for them to, basically intrude into a setback area. Solar panels may extend 10 feet above a maximum building roof, which is a nice thing. And then, there's discussion of green roof and the ability to expand your I guess your footprint if you have a green roof. The point is, to me, just from a big picture perspective, is there an appetite, do you think, from the Planning Commission's perspective, to have something flexible, a little bit more open-ended, and saying, if you do things like get LEED certification, we will consider giving you a zoning bonus? Or do you think that in the Radnor context, the approach is, let's make it quite clear, here are the things that we're going to provide, and if you do A, you're going to get B?
Personally, I think that the quite clear approach is a little better than the discretionary bonus. I think it is a level playing field, and if you're going to do a 50,000 square foot building and you raise the height and you give up some setback, it should be all comparatively knowable. I'm not sure that everyone on the Planning Commission would agree with that, but that's where I come from.
A quick example to this would be, you can build 10 feet above your maximum building height if that 10 feet is solar panels, but it doesn't say anything about maybe a small wind turbine. So the fact that it's so prescriptive, it's almost defeating itself, being so prescriptive.
It's an interesting thing. There are 3 different ordinances that we reviewed briefly, and they're in Never Never Land right now, about residential solar installations. In other words, regulating it more than the way it is right now, so that everybody knows what they can do and what they can't do. Wind on your house. I mean, there's been discussions about this. And there was a brief review, and it would probably be difficult for me to find it on a paper basis, but I'm sure it exists. There are 3 different ordinances dealing with like geothermal, wind, and solar. But they haven't gone anywhere since our first cursory review.
Well, I would issue some support to where Sloan was coming from in that more flexible one. It seems encouraging of innovative approaches to, and it also speaks to what you were saying, Skip, that development, say 38 feet, that's, you'd almost rather have something that's 48 feet and smartly developed, some vague definition of smartly developed, rather than something that was 38 feet and it could be much more obtrusive and annoying to neighbors. And the number 38 isn't like a magic number, meaning that anything under 38 is going to be a great development on a property.
Well, it's the status quo.
And yeah, that's what I'm saying. To get away from that status quo might take like an innovative approach a little bit.
The discussions include like a 60-foot tower, but with a 500-foot setback. And then there might not be very many lots that you can actually do that, but there might. And the neighbors, which have a tremendous amount of impact, because when they begin to speak, it gets difficult to disagree, and there's a lot of weight given to the public comment. Neighbors would probably say right now they would not like a height increase. That doesn't mean that it doesn't make sense if it's presented the right way. Whatever we do on planning, we're also like the EAC advisory, and ultimately the commissioners will decide if it makes sense or not. They are looking to us for guidance, but we are not on the same page yet by any means. We haven't really completely gone through this new version, because we try to keep these meetings to about 2 hours to keep the public involved and the exhaustion level balanced. So I do think it will be months, not weeks, before we get to something on this. I do say also that, Sloan, anytime you or anyone is more than welcome. It's difficult for me to, do a full presentation up there. I don't think it's fair or appropriate, but you can make a presentation from the floor.
Well, and I was able
And
to
you
do
did,
that
and you
at
did.
the last meeting, and I appreciated it. You even let me go first, which I very much appreciated. So, yeah, I think again, I think the Planning Commission is really doing a real public service digging into this and looking. I know this is one small part of a very large project, so thank you. And if there's any advice in terms of how we should analyze this, look at it, and make it as useful as possible, please let us know, because
I think that one way of looking at our consultant is that he comes across as a general contractor of this kind of review. So I don't think he's necessarily a specialist in green clauses. Right. And I don't know that I could spend the township's money by asking if we had a sub-consultant that, could help us with greening up all of our ordinances. But that
Isn't
might
that
be
Brenda?
an interesting recommendation. Pardon?
Isn't that Brenda?
Well, yeah,
I think we can certainly serve as a.
and we do. I mean, the greenhouse gas thing, and yeah.
I think, like you asked before about specifics about, say, green roof
Right.
models, and
I guess what I'm trying to say is don't limit yourself to what you see in these outlines. You can expand. You've already expanded the agenda by your first presentation, Sloan, and it can get bigger. And it really should. This is a great time, because this will ripple through other zoning if you do it right.
oh, that's encouraging. And I guess my request would be maybe consider whether we could make it a little bit more flexible, because one of the things that's concerning to me in terms of the green incentives is, I don't have a crystal ball on what people might want to do in a year or 2 or 5, and I would feel better, with a green incentive section that was able to encourage them to do some things that we can't even imagine what that might be, but at the time is exactly what we want them to do. But so something, maybe if we have mostly this thing very specified, but at least something that says, like Tradifern does, at the end, or other similar cooperative actions indicating a desire to further the, something like that, so that if somebody comes along, and I don't know whether LEED certification, or the others are going to really cover the full waterfront in 2 years and 10 years. So something like that, where it's mostly specified, but then there is some provision that lets people come forward with things that really work in the future.
To summarize a couple remaining points, one different approach would be to create the equivalent of a green ordinance. And in that green ordinance, maybe address the solar residential power aspect. Fold it all into one and have it apply across the whole code, so that you'd say, instead of just saying in the PI district, he starts to talk about shade trees, and we have a shade tree ordinance, and he enhances perhaps some of the aspects of the shade tree ordinance as it might not ordinarily apply to a PI use. But why not think about, and I'll bring this up, why not think about an ordinance that is what you would call, for lack of a better word, the green ordinance, and see how much of that can apply to commercial and residential development. And that way, we don't have to do this every single time as we look at other sections, of the zoning code. So remind me if I don't do it, but I think I'll do it.
Well, it's an interesting discussion. I appreciate the input, Skip. If everybody's okay, we'll move along to the Open Space Committee. And after that, Ann is going to skip out.
Yeah.
So somebody else pick up the minutes after Ann leaves?
And if you email them to me, I can put them in. There really hasn't been anything to report on the Open Space Committee. The progress is fairly incremental. We're still working on the scope of work for the consultant for the open space project.
Okay, well, that was easy. Community environmental awareness, I would not have anything to report about, the school district. Does anybody else have anything to report about community environmental awareness?
I think there's, I forget the organization they're coming from, but they're going door to door in the township, asking residents to sign up for clean energy as part of their electric bill.
Clean Air Council?
Yes. I think that's a good heads up that they're going around. I don't know too much about them, but if there's education maybe that anyone has on the committee that we can share, it might be helpful, because I've had a couple folks call me and say, who are these people? And I didn't know much background on them, so.
Well, they did get me the other day, and I don't remember them asking anything about that, about clean power. But I did shoo them off my porch fairly quickly. But
I did meet one of their campaign coordinators last night, and they're basically encouraging people to take advantage of the energy choice opportunity to, buy green power. So I don't. They may have some benefit as a result of doing that. I think maybe they do, but it's still, the idea is to encourage people to take advantage of this opportunity, and so.
Yeah, the messaging was, as it was relayed to me, was confusing. And then Josh mentioned the community energy stuff earlier, where you just go online and sign up. I said that sounds like a much better alternative than the confusion that was being communicated, so.
There's just a lot of people aren't getting the word. That's the problem, I think. They're kind of overwhelmed with material from everybody, and so they, don't realize.
That website is great, papowerswitch.com. It's mandated that PECO create that website, I believe, during deregulation, when deregulation happened. So it's not a commercial website. It's just a clearinghouse of information, and so nobody should be scared about going onto that website and just seeing what's available. And they have a new ability on that website that you can sort providers by not only green, but where the green comes from, which I think I said earlier, actually, but which is new and pretty cool. Liaison reports. We already heard from Skip. Chris, you want to tell us anything what's going on at Parks and Recreation?
Sure. We had our monthly meeting 2 weeks ago, September 13th. We got a presentation from one of the staff members on the summer program activities, the camps, and the various things that they provided in the summertime. Some of you may have seen they had a movie night out here, and they had a big night with the Radnor Little League for their 60th anniversary, where they put the Phillies game up on a big screen over at Enke Park. So they had a pretty active summer. That seemed to have gone well. Also, there's a subcommittee to our board that will be working specifically on the Willows project. There's an RFP out that I believe are sponsored due in October for organizations that may look to come to the township with ideas, suggestions, proposals on what they'd like to do with the property there, to try and see what options we have as a township to keep that facility, but possibly share some of the expenses to maintaining it and upgrading it as needed. So our subcommittee will help the Board of Commissioners with that process, with trying to determine what the public opinion is from Radnor Township residents, and really just help guide that process along. And then the last thing we talked about was the the staff's goal of putting together a fee schedule for usage of township parks and facilities by organizations. There's kind of 3 different areas of organizations that use it. There's community youth athletic groups like Radnor Wayne Little League or Radnor Youth Basketball, which uses some of the facilities that the township owns as opposed to the school district owns. There are private groups that use those facilities, and softball leagues, guys that maybe want to give tennis lessons, things like that. So trying to determine how we want to allow them to use the facilities and what fees they will be charged for it. There was a third group of usage, but that's escaped me right now. I have it written down here. So we're hoping to have at the next meeting, which is October 11th, have a proposed fee schedule to put together and put in place for the coming year. And that's about it for Parks and Rec.
Chris, could I ask? I understand there's a football. Is there a new football Pop? Is it Pop Warner for?
Yeah, there's a new football league in Radnor that got organized by a couple guys in the community, and I think they're fielding 2 or 3 teams in one of the local leagues. I know there's I believe there's a 100-pound team playing, and there's a 120-pound team playing. I think it's the first time, at least since I've lived in Radnor, there's been youth football in the township.
I think
So that's exciting.
The high school coach is involved as well.
Yeah, the high school
Coach Ryan.
coach and his staff are supporting that, and so it's another
That's
opportunity for the kids, and something that
Yeah,
they can
terrific.
look forward to. Right.
That's great.
Could I just ask a question about the Willows issue? Did you say there's going to be a survey of community residents about?
Yeah, I don't know whether we'll do a survey or we'll have public meetings about the Willows to discuss various proposals we've received in from different groups and try and gauge, what the public, would like to see done with the Willows. It's going to be important that we identify the history of the Willows, when the township bought it and why they bought it, et cetera. B, identify the costs and expenses to maintain it each year, as well as the upgrades that are really needed to keep that building safe and to meet all the necessary codes, and to keep it if we're going to keep it as a venue for weddings and other types of functions, it's going to need some investment put into it, so that the community gets some information and then gives us some feedback as to how they view that facility and whether they think it's something that their tax dollars should be spent on.
I've seen that report at one of the open space meetings. There's a separate report on the Willows.
Mm-hmm.
One of the issues is that the number of events has declined quite a bit in the last few years. So those generate some income, and they're not generating that income.
Correct. And and I don't remember the name of the people, but there was a couple that lived at the Willows for 25 years that were the caretakers, and the woman was also kind of the coordinator of events and things like that. They, quote unquote, retired and moved out of the Willows back in June, so we don't have anybody living there full time at this point. But I think it also provides an opportunity to get some fresh ideas about marketing that facility and trying to go out and look for more opportunities to use that. Because, Skip, you're right, the number of events has gone down in the last 3 to 5 years.
Has there been any response yet to the RFP?
No, I don't think responses are due until sometime in October.
So we haven't got any early ones? Nobody's
Not
chomping at the bit?
Not to the best of my knowledge.
'Cause I think,
usually the RFP process, folks don't submit. At least I've found they're not going to submit them earlier than
to the
due
deadline.
date. Yeah.
I think that effort is going to inform the public survey, quote-unquote, survey process, clearly, because some of the only feasible options that we have are those options that are going to be self-sustaining, whether we're paying for it or new tenants paying for it. So,
Right.
Is it going to be a new restaurant? Is it going to be a gym or whatever? Who knows what it's going to be? But we have to have somebody that's interested in it before it can be
Right.
on the table as an option. I'd like to see it, preserved as a nothing, but then as a museum or something, that doesn't make any money, that's not really a feasible
Right.
option, so it's got to be a,
Well, hopefully it doesn't become a Planet Fitness, but somewhere in between it, becomes, a useful site and, something the township can continue to be proud of, because I think, at least people I know, and for as long as I've lived here, it's nice having a property like that.
Yeah, it's
That's ours.
Yeah. Is it, do you have any sense, it seems like the RFP process is very important to generate, good ideas. I think I saw some publicity about it in the newspaper, which is great. Do you have any sense of whether there's an organized effort to get the word out so that we maximize the number of RFPs that might, because I can imagine some guy who's a big restaurant guru who might think this is great but didn't hear about it. I mean, so I'm just wondering if there's any sense, what we could do, what the township's doing to, really get the word out and make sure that, that we're going to get, as many good ideas as we can.
Yeah, I'm not really sure, Sloan, what they're doing to market that whole process. It's my opinion that this will be the first of 2 or 3 similar processes, that this is going to generate some discussion points and some ideas that'll allow us to go to the public and get some feedback. And then my guess is the process will start all over again once we have a better idea of, who's out there, public-private partnerships, different types of things, or just private, for-profit business wants to come in. I don't think any of us knows
Right.
who would have an interest in it yet, so
maybe
I
we-
think it's
we
going to be a
see-
step process.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that's encouraging in the sense that, let's see how it goes first round. If it's a little underwhelming in terms of ideas, maybe it's not like we have to make a decision by
Yeah, I don't get the sense that we need to make a decision by end of November
the end of
of this
November.
year. No,
And
I
we
think
could maybe look at whether it needs to be more
This-
widely advertised or whatever it is.
my guess is this will be a year-long process. Yeah,
That makes sense because it is a big deal.
yeah, absolutely. That's it for Parks and Rec. Thank you.
thanks, Chris, appreciate that. Any
There's,
comment?
I think I mentioned it last meeting, simultaneously, there's also a complete inventory that they've started the process in terms of creating of all open space and township property, et cetera. Company, I think, is called Cressa or something like that. And, there's all sorts of parcels. I mean, there's seemingly like over 100. So it's a process, and that's going on too.
Okay, moving along, do we have any, we actually don't have a representative or a liaison from the Board of Health this month, so we'll move along to old business. Any old business? Any new business?
I would just like to note on one of my favorite topics, electric cars, that the Chevy Volt is doing quite well in terms of sales, as are some of the other plug-in hybrid models. While it is true that GM is suspending production at one plant to match supply to sales, it's also true that Volt sales have surged to new heights, according to Green Car reports early September. This month they sold 2,831 Volts, the highest ever monthly volume for the Volt since it went on sale in December 2010. The Leaf is selling at about 500 to 750 a month, and last year in 2011, they total sales were 17,000 plug-in vehicles, and August sales numbers continue to support the notion that this year, 2012 sales will be about double that total, perhaps slightly higher. So encouraging, encouraging trends and pretty good news on that front. Love to see it even higher, but the trend is good.
have any friends that have bought them yet?
I,
Because of you?
well, I have to say that I got into my first Volt traffic jam the other day, which was going home. I drove past a neighbor who also has a Volt, and as I was driving along, a Volt pulled in behind me. So I guess it wasn't quite a traffic jam, but it was, you know, it was a parade.
Parade. All Delaware Valley Volt owners in
Yeah,
one road.
exactly. All three of us.
I'd like to open it up to public comment. Anybody want to have a word? No? Well then, we're done our agenda. I suppose we adjourn. Thank you. Good night.